Hello, it's Amy. I'm back again with the Journal of Emily Shore. If you're not familiar with the reading series I've been doing, you can find the first half of the book, because we're about halfway through now, uh, in the Emily Shore playlist on my channel homepage. And we are on page 164 today, the year 1836, and we are beginning with October the 13th, which was a Thursday. About a year and a half ago, when Grandmama and Aunt Belle lived in Summerlin Place, they all but witnessed a rather fearful coach accident. Summerlin Place is at right angles with the London road, and the corner house in which they lived is close upon the very road. At that time the road was divided into the upper and lower, which ran parallel and at length joined, but the upper was for some distance 6 or 8 feet higher than the lower. The lower ran close to my aunt's garden gate. Of course, in this situation they always saw and heard the London coaches coming into the town. One calm moonlit night, as they were sitting together, they heard the herald approaching at a furious rate, rattling along and the guard's horn blowing as usual. They were listening to it when all of a sudden these sounds stopped short. A single moment of silence ensued, then a heavy roll and a shout, and then all was quiet again. Uncle William exclaimed, "It's over," and they all, in a terrible fright, rushed out into the road. There, to be sure, they found the herald lying overturned on the lower road. The horses had kept their legs, but instead of running away, stood trembling with terror. It seems that the coachman, being quite drunk, had driven the coach over the bank and through the railing from the upper road to the lower. The guard, who saw what was about to happen, called out to him to pull up, but he was too drunk to do so. A young woman who was sitting behind with the guard asked him if she should jump down, and he said no, she must keep fast where she was. He himself then jumped off safely, and over went the coach. The young woman fell off, and the coach fell on her. She was dreadfully hurt, and was carried insensible into the house. A poor sailor, too, was very severely injured. His ankle was dislocated, and his foot hung loose. The loss to him was very great from this accident, for he had with great difficulty come to Devonshire to go on board a ship, which was to sail immediately. Of course he lost his passage. Nobody else, I believe, was hurt. The coachman, who deserved to have his neck broken, entirely escaped. Within 5 minutes of the accident, a crowd of thieves and pickpockets assembled. At last the mob amounted to some hundreds, but I do not think anything was stolen. In about an hour the coach was raised up again by main force, and proceeded as before. Great pains were taken to hush up the affair. No examination or inquiry was made. It never even found its way into print, and I dare say our family know more about it than anybody else. October 17th, Monday. Mamma went away today, leaving me here for 7 months, 171 miles from home. But I think I shall be happy here as I can anywhere away from home. For Aunt Belle is exceedingly kind, and I love my cousins very much. Mamma travels in the most convenient way possible, for Papa's cousin, Bulkeley Praed, takes her to London in his own carriage. October 19th, Wednesday. We passed many rows of buildings in the most ugly, fantastical, nondescript style, a mixture of very barbarous Tudor English with an approach to Grecian and a great resemblance to Chinese. Most of the houses are painted or washed a glaring white. October 20th, Thursday. After, I am sorry to say, a very idle week, I resolved to begin studying again. I took up Morgan's arithmetic and read over carefully some of the earlier part. But I find my brain muddy and rusty with disuse during my long illness, and I was quite fatigued in a very short time. However, I shall practice steady a little every day and get myself into the way of it again. October 22nd, Saturday. I took another walk with my uncle. We went up Castle Street and into Castle Yard. Very little is left of the ancient castle of Exeter, except a bit of the wall and a very picturesque ruin of Norman date, covered with aged ivy, which looks as old as itself. The castle yard is a neatly kept area, bordered by tall elms. At one end is an ugly modern building, the Sessions House, where my uncle told me that formerly, when the assize balls were held there, they used to dance over the heads of the prisoners and in their very hearing. This barbarous custom is now disused. We ascended the rampart of the castle and walked along the top of the wall. As soon as we had mounted, a most splendid view burst upon my sight through the lofty elms rising in front. The whole of Exeter lay out spread before us, and a wide extent of hilly and woody country on every side. We saw the river Exe winding along and could trace its course down to the sea. I could even see Exmouth and its church situated at the mouth. I saw also the noble cathedral, the whole length of which was before me. It is certainly a glorious view, though unfortunately obscured today by a kind of hazy sunshine. I looked at it a long time with great delight. We then descended the rampart and returned home by the beautiful walk of the Northern Hay. In Paris Street, we stopped at the house of a man named Frost, a self-taught mechanic of wonderful genius. And I've suddenly lost my page here. I looked up to check the time and I lost my spot on the page. Where did we go? Wonderful genius. To see a very remarkable clock, constructed by an Exeter man 200 years ago. It is a most singular piece of mechanism, having 4, query 5, it says in brackets, dial plates. The principal one shows the hour of the day or night. A small one above shows the month, another the day of the month, another the day of the week, another leap year. The clock also has a band of music and various figures which act and move at the same time. Also a moving panorama representing the course of the sun. The whole forms a very splendid and extraordinary work. It had long been out of repair, and Frost was the only man in Exeter who was able to re-put it into order again. It is in the possession of an attorney who, it is said, will not sell it for less than £700. October 28, Friday. No less than 5 letters from Papa, Mamma, Arabella, Louisa, and Mackworth. Most of them speak of the poor Custs. Lady Anna Maria, says Arabella, Mr. Cust, and Lucy, now Miss Cust, have called. They all seemed so very unhappy that it was quite touching to see them, especially when they force a laugh or try to speak cheerfully. And you have no idea how ill and melancholy poor Lucy looked. She was as white as a sheet, her lips especially, and spoke in so low and sorrowful a voice as to be hardly audible. She was several times near bursting into tears, and altogether was the picture of distress and ill health. November 5th. Louisa writes, Mackie has discovered a pair of large owls that take their pleasure in sitting alone in the laurel and holly hedge. November 8th, Tuesday. I was walking up and down the drawing room, which I usually do for exercise when the others are gone out, repeating my favourite poem, Sir Eustace Grey, when I heard, to my great surprise, the little squeak of a golden-crusted wren. I instantly walked to the window and looked out into the little front garden, where I beheld a pair of these beautiful little birds flitting about in the arbutus. When I was looking on, a black cat came stealing up slyly and put the golden wrens to flight. November 10th. A's letter is very amusing. She gives a very nice account of her studies and occupations. I am glad to find that Lord Ipswich seems to be as pleasant a pupil as any. Indeed, more so, at least in his manners, which are very gentlemanly and unassuming. November 16th, Wednesday. We talked today about Mrs. Siddons. Aunt Bell has met her at Bursted House, the place of Lord Arran, where she has dined when staying at Bursted Lodge with her aunts, Lady Mayo and Mrs. Smith. Lord A, an effeminate, profligate, ugly old man with a withered leg, aspired to being a patron of the arts and sciences, and his house was always thronged by professors and amateurs of all sorts. One of these, whom my aunt recollects, was a Mr. Lodge, a musical performer. Another was a Miss Wilkinson, a girl of 16 or 17, who sang. Mrs. Siddons, too, was there. Now, she was an exceedingly proud woman, and was, of course, to be considered the queen of the party. But as there was not a woman in the house who did not, by right rank above her, such manoeuvring was employed to raise her above them. When Aunt Bell dined there, she was curious to see how this object would be affected. A little before the company was summoned to dinner, Mrs. Siddons vanished, and while they entered the dining room at one door, behold, she was seen entering like a queen by herself at the other. She sometimes read Shakespeare to the party, on which occasion Lord A always took care to have a scene ready, and was himself invariably prepared with tears and pocket-handkerchief. Lord A was extremely unkind to his wife, who, when she died, declared that she was happy to depart from life, for she had always been miserable in it. Yet she had no hope of a better world. She was a proud woman, but very gentle, and she had a peculiarly dry way of saying witty and pointed things which set all the company laughing, without moving a muscle of her own countenance. Lord A had no children of his own. He had a nephew of whom he took no notice, and he thought fit to bring up the children of his butler to introduce them into the drawing room and admit them among his company. One of these was a girl named Mary Annie. Of the other one, who was lame and not presentable, he caused to be brought up as a chemist, and the two others, A and J, he educated for the church and made his chaplains. Aunt Bell has seen them at his house. They were ordinary-looking youths, and not much of the look of gentlemen. J was impudent, liked his situation well enough, and having something of a voice, would entertain the company with singing. But A, who turned out a very excellent young man, felt his situation to be exceedingly painful, and lived a miserable life by turns in the drawing room and housekeeper's room, and well aware that he was treated with contempt by the company in the former, and turned into ridicule behind his back. He happened to be seated by Aunt Bell, who had previously made up her mind to take no notice of him, but seeing how unhappy he looked, she turned and spoke to him, upon which he gave a start of surprise, and afterwards burst into tears. At first their father, the butler, used to wait on his own sons, but this being thought rather preposterous, his office was changed to avoid it. Lord A once gave mortal offence to the Duchess of Gloucester by introducing these young, and we've got P's, but we've got a big dash, so something is omitted there. These young people, let's insert the word people, these young people, when she dined at his house, and endeavoring to place one of them by her, which she took good care to avoid. A living which had been promised to Papa or my uncle was bestowed on one of them. And so that sounds like a very socially unconventional household, but a very interesting one to read about. And we'll leave it at that for today. And when we come back next time, we'll be on page 169 with the entry for November the 26th of 1836, which was a Saturday.